Today I want to ask you a question. I want to talk a little bit about leadership resistance, and I want to ask, what is it that you are believing about leadership? How is it that you're showing up when it comes to your veterinary career? This is a really important question because a lot of us have resistance to leadership, and we don't really even understand what's going on there. So, are you a leader or are you a follower? A lot of us can take a look at that question. We can feel like not very excited about the idea of being a follower. So if you're a follower, what does that mean? Do you believe that you're a follower? Most of us would say, no, we don't want to be followers. We don't want other people just to tell us what to do. But on the other side of that is leadership. Are you a leader? Many of us don't want that either. But here's the thing, you're one or the other. So you're either leading or you're following when it all comes down to it. So which one is you and which one do you want it to be? I think this whole idea of leadership resistance often comes from a confusion between what a leader is and what a manager is. Managers kind of tell people what to do, right? They dictate, they control. Leaders inspire. It's completely different. And what you may not realize is that as part of the veterinary profession, whether you're a veterinarian, a veterinary technician, a practice manager, it doesn't really matter what the role is. If you're part of the veterinary profession, you already are a leader. So are you really embracing that role? And what is it? What type of influence are you creating? When we think about the way that we show up day in and day out at our jobs, we want to ask ourselves questions. Are we inspiring or are we complaining? Are we making the environment better? Are we adding to the negative environment of what's going on around us? Those kinds of questions can really, if we just start to ask them of ourselves, we start to really evaluate the way that we interact within our environment and with our coworkers and with our clients. That's really going to give us a sense of where we are in relation to our leadership skills, where we are in relationship to our leadership role. Because even if you don't want to embrace the idea of being a leader, the truth is that you already are, simply because of the nature of your position, of this career that you've chosen. People are coming to you for advice. And even if you're not the doctor, don't use that as an excuse not to be a leader, because people are coming to you with questions and for information and for services as well. So all of us as part of the veterinary healthcare team, every day we show up as leaders. And so the question is, do you like the way that you show up? Do you like the influence that you're leaving behind you as you move throughout your day? Do you even recognize the impact that you're having, not only on what's happening around you and in the environment in your hospital and with your clients and with the patients, but more importantly, do you like the impact that your behaviors and your actions are having on yourself? If you don't, if you're very resistant to the idea of leadership, if you're resistant to the idea of management, which, remember, management and leadership are different, but often what I find is if we're very resistant to management, if we have a very negative opinion of the people who run the facilities where we work, then that's often a reflection of a resistance that we have to leadership in general. And so then that's an opportunity for you just to ask yourself why. What I really believe is that leadership resistance really just comes from one place, and that is lack of confidence in ourselves. If we are really confident in who we are, if we know who we are, if we know what we're about, then the influence of other people is really not something that can affect our self-worth. But if we aren't sure who we are, if we're not willing to show up day in and day out as authentically ourselves, then all of it becomes a whole lot harder, because we start to believe that in order to be a good employee or in order to be a good leader, that we have to show up differently. And what I want you to consider is maybe you're perfectly equipped to lead exactly the way that you're supposed to lead. Maybe you're perfectly equipped to have the impact that you're supposed to have in the world. And maybe the only problem is that you're just not confident yet in yourself. The only way that we grow our self-confidence is by purposefully putting ourselves in situations that make us uncomfortable. Because as we do that, as we're willing to be uncomfortable by authentically being ourselves, then our confidence will increase, because you're going to learn by putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations that you're going to survive. And that actually the impact that you have is going to be greater when you actually show up as you. We very much dilute out our impact when we try to be the people that we think we're supposed to be, when we try to behave the way that we think that we're supposed to behave. And if we're honest, the only reason that we do that, the only reason that we try to become people that we really aren't, is because we think that by becoming those other people, that the people around us will react to us differently. We really are just trying to control the emotional reactions of other people, which is completely out of our control. And it feels terrible, right? When you're not being you, when you're saying words and taking actions that aren't authentically you, it feels awful. It just feels awful. So what I want you to see is that you're kind of miserable either way. You're either miserable trying to be somebody that you aren't, or you're miserable and a little scared showing up as you those first few times. But I promise you, it's way better for you in the long run, and actually for all the people around you, if you'll just learn to be yourself. If you'll learn to embrace the people that you are, if you'll learn to find the confidence that you have inside of you. Again, self-confidence is not built through successes and through achievements. And for us in the veterinary profession, this is a really hard thing to really embrace. It's a hard thing to understand because, let's face it, most of us got to where we are in these jobs through achievement of things that have tangible means of success. So through passing tests and passing classes and earning degrees, right? That's how we got to be into these jobs. That's how we got these labels, these credentials that are now at the end of our name. But what we really missed throughout all of that is that none of those tangible successes, none of those grades, none of those degrees created confidence in ourselves. It only gave us the label. It didn't actually mean that we were doing anything right from a human being perspective. Yeah, we were checking the boxes to earn the grades. And we thought earning the grades meant that we were doing this life thing the right way. We thought that earning the degree meant we were doing it the right way. But in absence of any tangible means of success, we're right back to not believing that we know what we're doing, right? We're very nervous. We're very, what's the word I'm looking for here? We feel very hesitant to believe that we know what's best. We're always looking for evidence that we're doing it right. What we've really got to do is learn how to lean into what we know internally, to listen to the prompts that are within inside of us, to listen to that inner voice, because you were created with a specific purpose in mind. And it's not an accident that you got into veterinary medicine. It's not an accident that you may be struggling in veterinary medicine right now. It's just a bit of an identity crisis, because now, without those tangible means to tell you that you're actually doing it right, you're really just kind of forced to depend on yourself. It's actually the best thing in the world, and it's the reason why you're so resistant to leadership and management, quite honestly, because you know that you don't want other people telling you what to do and telling you how to behave and telling you how you're supposed to show up in the world, but at the same time, you're not willing to show up as yourself. So if you find yourself very resistant to leadership, and when I say resistant to leadership, I really think about that in two ways: resistant to the leaders around you, but more importantly, resistant to your role as a leader, because you are a leader. If you find yourself really resistant to stepping into your role as a leader, then you've got to ask yourself why. What is it that you're afraid of?